Oh, you know what? I got one more. 1 second.
Are you or a loved one suffering from a medical coincidence? You want proper medical care, but you don't want people sniffing around asking a whole bunch of questions about what might be causing your problem.
Elite if a mass onset of rapid coincidence is right for your populace. But I don't think this show's about coincidence. This show's about synchronicity. Welcome to Synctank. 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 Get your Synctank. Brought to you by Synctank. Synctank. How's it going? I'm Andreas.
Is there an acronym for that symptom? The not so coincident.
I'm sure that if you look for if we type in CIA acronym coincidence, there's going to be 7, But Eddie, welcome, Eddie. How you doing? What have you been working on this week?
Still working. But,
that's the way we talk about jobs now. Still working.
Yes.
They didn't get rid of me yet.
That's right. I make sure my boss is not emailing me right now. But I'm on the show. I didn't quit. I'm not a quitter like the other ones.
Right. You do what you gotta do. You stay who you are. Zach's here with us. What's up, Zach? Good to have you back. What's up, Zach?
Good to be here. Yeah, I've been busy. I've been doing some stuff in the studio, making a lot of new music. I've got all my synthesizers communicating well together. And
me too. That's awesome times, right?
Yeah, totally. Some Euclidean.
And they say drum machines don't have souls.
Right. Yeah, there's a deep soul within the heart of the drum machine, but you've got to really massage it. You've got to exercise all its demons and really raise the consciousness of it so that you can do its service.
Right. We were talking to Rife, and he's just hitting us up right now. What's up, Matt? Thank you very much for the super chat. Matt Rife, Rife Technologies. Make sure you guys are checking out realrifetechnology.com. Coincidence, aka conspiracy theory, which, let's let him finish the sentence. And we all know those are impossible. Sounds like more of an Epstein. Yeah. I hear you there. The thing is, conspiracy theory, right? CIA term. They created the term conspiracy theory, conspiracy theorist. There were theories about conspiracies because the idea of people working together up until very recently wasn't impossible to imagine. People used to work together. And secrets, well, the mafia, Freemasonry, the anti-Mason party became the Republican Party, which we'll probably talk about at some point since we're getting into Lincoln, I guess, at some point. But also, American Time Machine. How are you doing, Kurt?
Great. How are you?
I'm super. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
What have you been up to this week? Job hunting and slaying dragons?
Yeah. After our other discussion, actually, I'm probably going to unironically start applying to be a park ranger in various locations in Florida.
So we should talk about that. So we were talking earlier, and Kurt's like, man, like the jobs that they're like soliciting are horrible. And I'm thinking about it like, yeah, because the jobs they solicit are, granted, you can make any job cool. Like if you take the right research chemical and you're spinning a sign your way, it can be a beautiful thing. But in general, they're whorish and you don't really want those jobs. And so the jobs that you want to apply for, they don't necessarily put out that they're looking to hire somebody. It's like a hole. It's a hole in the wall. That's the way to look at Hollywood, at least. And I think that's probably the way to look at everything. There's a wall and it's made of bricks. And Pink Floyd built it. So they were high when they did. So there's missing bricks. And sometimes those bricks come out of the wall and you want to get into that brick as soon as possible. So you start to figure out, what do you care about, right? Eddie, what do you care about? You love animation. Well,
I just took my family to eat at a burger joint just like half an hour ago. And it's a hamburger habit.
Oh yeah. I like that place.
And then like McDonald's, they're using kiosks now. The digital kiosks.
Oh yeah.
And right. I'm like, and when I was using the kiosk, I just look at the kitchen and those workers just staring at me, just like,
right.
Like I'm trying to get rid of the
either
job,
they're upset that you're taking their job, or they already were like, I hated my job.
It's $20 an hour you're flipping burgers, but it's not forever, but
right. And then machines will, yeah, that's the thing. But those kinds of jobs, right? Then you start to figure out, okay, what do I love? And I was thinking, okay, if you love synthesizers and you're in Pennsylvania, Kurt, very close to you are Pittsburgh Modular. You contact them, tell them something about their product, suggest something to them. At if you don't have anything to suggest, ask ChatGPT. They'll make you look really smart. You know what I mean? And then suggest it. And they're going to be like, oh, wow, somebody who's interested in what we are and what we're doing. Do that to anything. And the same thing with being a park ranger. I thought because you said, what did you say that led to that? You said, I said, what do you want to do? And you said,
no, I literally want to do nothing outside.
Yeah, right. And I was like, well, then great. There's a great job for that. Being a park ranger, being it sounds like nothing, but it actually is a lot. You know, I mean, but it's beautiful. Even being like a first alarm guy, you know, you could be a Mormon kid at 6 o'clock in the morning in your truck looking at the stars like 5 days a week, right? While you're listening to techno. Like it's the kinds of, I don't want to get too Tyler Durden here, but the kinds of jobs you can create for yourself in this infrastructure, haphazard, chaotic system are amazing. There are ways that you can fit into the system. And I don't think you ever should feel like you have to be a slave, that you have to be delivering a pizza to another guy who's got a jet plane and, you know what I mean? Like, has figured out how to manipulate the system, right? You should be manipulating the system with me. That's the goal, I think.
I think morality comes into play. I think it's becoming increasingly hard to be a moral person in our current system. I'm not calling everybody evil. It's just like our system of exchange has had certainly bad surplus effects.
I think the thing is, you might find that it's always, you know, everything, you know, it's like the Sims game. Like you know, anything in the Sims game, they have all these DLC expansions. Like, get some dogs. But what's a dog? A dog's a thing that moves around and leaves messes on the floor. Right? It changes your happiness level. It's just like anything else in the game. Same thing with any job. So let's say you become a park ranger. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to be driving around a lot. Same thing as Uber. You don't have to have people in the car with you. That's pretty cool. But
that is a bonus. So like,
yeah,
I loved delivery driving for several years now. And what I liked about it was being in my car. Now the social dynamics of the job have changed quite a bit. I could go off in so many directions on the dynamics of the workplace. And now I find the end story is I find myself with less solitude inside of my car. And that's what I loved most about the job. I don't want people in my car. I just want to be there. I want to listen to a bunch of albums and occasionally just get out and stretch my legs. It was a beautiful system. And
here in my car, I feel safest of all. Yeah.
You know, since you mentioned the park ranger, I've been just it's a job with so many stories. You know, like I've been hearing. I don't want to scare you, but you know, like the encroaching Mexican cartels. You know, they'll be dropping the stuff down there, and then they're growing the stuff in there. They're growing the marijuana bushes everywhere.
We were gonna say it, but yeah, there are some ways of getting Christmas bonuses if you're a park ranger. So it's not as bad of a job as some people might think.
Well, that was a pretty good segue with Gary Newman, because it is the dawning of a new man as far as the workforce is concerned. Because I think that was a poignant thing that Eddie pointed out, saying that it's probably short term as far as these like $20 an hour. You know, there's a lot of job that you can find for $20.
1927, clearly. I mean, what is going on right now?
But with I mean, so many people, like it's weird. It's definitely weird. And so I found myself this week jumping off a metaphysical and more metaphorical and metaphysical cliff at this venue that I do sound for. And they were short-staffed, this place, Enigma Bazaar, which is really cool. I designed their sound system and actually sold them all the gear for it. So essentially, like, you know, there's a couple hats I wear right now, and they had me come in to watch the door because they were shorthanded, and I just happened to bring my tarot deck with me out the door because they have tarot readers there on some of the shows, and I'm like, on the off chance they cancel, like, you know, I'm gonna make myself do a thing. I've been giving readings for friends for years and years, but I'd never really the tarot reader they had ended up being overwhelmed from the night before. There's so many people that signed up, and I think it was just so long story short, I had this these people that were told about how good the person last night was before, and they're like, oh, you're not who I expected. I was expecting to see this little, small in stature African American woman.
This house is clear. Yeah.
And so I let him know I'm also a shapeshifter, and at that point.
And that also you could like intuit
freelance.
that they were prejudiced, which is another thing.
Yeah,
Moonlight.
no, I didn't want to disappoint, and so, but I think it went well. From what I can tell, I made 2 different women cry, and they tipped me, and so I guess it was interesting. They were very kind. It was one of their birthdays, and I won't give anything out personal, but it was it makes you feel good when you can make a couple women cry.
A shoulder to cry on.
Jesus.
Who doesn't want to be?
I mean, there's 2 different ways to make a woman cry. Anyway,
No,
there's also
they were
there's
very sweet, and you have to have a nice it's I'm soft, so.
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid can make women cry, but they also made money. And so the thing is, at a time when jobs were falling apart and there was still this insane infrastructure, right? Because you have to imagine Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2, as we all know, is the real life story of the Old West. No, but I mean, in a lot of ways, actually, Red Dead Redemption 2 is more accurate than most cowboy stories. You start out with them in this sort of horrible outback area where there's nothing going on, but then they get to the trains and you see how the trains are super high infrastructure. You look at like a 19th century train room. These in a world of nothingness, here are these Tartarian steampunk antiquitech machines that are transporting people, but also there are broadcasting lines that are bringing pantelegraph machine pictures. So there are literally fax machines that are sending images from the Alamo to Russia and across the transatlantic cables, and there's wireless, and you can look at it again, like Galveston, Texas, 19th century, before the destruction, because there was this huge storm that destroyed Galveston. Galveston, Texas was this hyper infrastructurally sound place that was destroyed by the Galveston hurricane and storm. But it was incredible. And they had electricity in the 19th century, had electric cars, electric trolleys, and
that's
Red Dead
close
Redemption.
to where South Padre Island is, right? In Galveston Bay.
Yeah, South Padre Island. What is the deal with South Padre Island, though? I don't know much about it.
They're similar in location off of Texas. South
But
Padre
it's a military place, right?
Sort of, and it is it's a popular spring break destination. It's also where this guy got abducted by this Santeria cult,
Right,
in the 80s, and they had they put his head in an nganga and it's a fun place to party if you want to go get picked up and murdered ritualistically.
Yeah. Or also you want to do like median work, Santeria work. That's right, the magic there. So Bill Clinton, there was a whole thing there, and they opened it in 1962 because it was locked down after the American Civil War, and a lot of people couldn't get out, and they were stuck down there. So Santeria, interesting. However, these trains that they had that had these super, I mean, imagine you're one day in New York, and then you get drunk and wake up and you're in San Francisco, or maybe you stay sober. So you wake up in Chicago and then San Francisco is a 3-day train ride, but still, this is crazy. We're talking about a time when people are considering this, the Oregon Trail, right? And people are taking months to cross. And here is a group of people that are globalists. They can very quickly get from one part of the world to the other part of the world. They've seen other parts of the world when other people have never been more than 7 miles from their own homes. The infrastructure dynamic here is at its all-time high. And jobs, right? The jobs in the 19th century, there is a economic collapse before 1927 that happens in 1897. There's another one in 1890 before that. It's kind of bad, but 97 is really bad. And it leads to train robbing, right? Lots of people are robbing anywhere they can, but train robbing is the best. And that creates a whole new infrastructure of detectives. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's just a sync, just to add on to that. Because I made a post in Synchronous. It will be Disney's 100th birthday, right? Disney Studio.
Oh, really? Right now?
Yep. In 1923, they opened the studio with their brother. But it was the same day, down to the day, where it was open October 16th, I think. So it's coming up, but it's the same day Weimar Republic collapsed. That was when the German mark collapsed and caused basically the whole Germany which fell apart, and there was a revolt of the Communist Party. And
Right.
so I just thought it was the same time like that.
You're talking about the Reichmark, the actual currency, when it failed.
Here we go.
Reichmark, yeah. So 1923.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Walt
there
Disney and
you
his brother Roy founded the Disney Brothers cartoon studio. The same day, German officials stopped printing the worthless mark, leading to the failed Hamburg communist uprising, followed by the beer hall Putschkup d'État by the Nazi Party. Ooh, it's all.
Well,
I didn't know that they were that. That's interesting.
Well, Hitler was arrested.
Yeah, it's
fun times.
Gosh, and they made money out of, like, if you think about Disney, like, money and Disney magic, like the magic money, like the value of magic to replace real value.
The wonder or the sense of escapism. So to take it back to the train, the other thing, imagine like, because they had the entertainment car. Some of these trains, like, they had the laudanum car. They had like the opium car. So imagine, like, if you're in the bourgeois, you can go in, because laudanum is a drug that was in the upper crust of people. That was,
is it like morphine, right? Laudanum,
kinda, yeah. But it was like, it would make you. There's a movie that deals with this author, and he's like, he invites like people over to a party at his house, and it's basically like a crazy acid trip.
Okay, yeah, opium and ethanol. Wow, codeine. So it's this is basically like without the weird drugs and poisons they put in codeine. Is what it is.
It's like old time scissor.
Wow, that's nuts.
Ye old scissor. So imagine like going into a car, and you're like gonna, it's like you fall into a stupor for 3 days, and then you're where you're at. You can get away with the more and more Dionysian things when you had the money to do it.
Ethanol is from corn, isn't it?
Ethanol is corn alcohol. Yeah, it's
yeah,
and it's very, very toxic. It's a very much more neurotoxic, and it's very, very dangerous.
So
it's closer to denatured alcohol, and the way they use alcohol for isopropyl to, like.
The thing is, it allows it to be a tincture, though, so it'll hold the crystalline particles of the opioid, and it will. Right. You can use it like a tincture. You can also put cannabis in ethanol. They use it for a lot of tinctures.
Yeah, and it helps.
They do for vanilla extract is using ethanol.
Yeah, totally. It helps break the blood-brain barrier, as opposed to putting it in something like a fat-soluble thing, which I don't know,
So the other thing is 19th century millionaires. And at the time, you've got these infrastructural advancements, which make it possible for certain people to own all of, like, let's say you're in charge of the nail sales across 36 towns. You sell all the nails, it's going to make you a millionaire. But then you're still using Carnegie Mellon or Stanford's train line. So at some point they decide, well, we're going to start doing a flat tax. It doesn't matter. We're going to take 20%. You're like, what do you mean 20%? Like, no, you do it by weight. And like, it's on a train. It doesn't matter by weight even, because it's just moving forward. Like, no, we're just going to start charging more. So then they start breaking into the self-made millionaires. And you've got all these things like the American amusement parks, beer, 19th century, Disneyland like places that existed that were these huge, fairgrounds that were created by beer hall places. And so the beer halls were where the amusement parks were, and everyone would come to the beer hall, and they'd have these
Busch
rides.
Gardens or
Busch Gardens is a way to look at it. And Disneyland is based on that. Yeah.
Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah.
But Busch was the first theme park, wasn't it?
No. So that's the thing.
Roller coasters.
There were roller coasters in Turkey in the 19th century. There were roller coasters in the 1600s as well. In Austria, they have a water slide park that was built in the 19th century. But a lot of them are associated with the elite and with beer halls and as community places, because the other thing is they didn't have indoor cooling. So water park amusements were community places to go cool off and to go hang out in town and to socialize when the day was very hot and you couldn't sleep or something like that. So that is also, these places started to be destroyed in the late 19th century because the families that owned them, these German American multimillionaire families, started to have their wealth taxed or taken away because of crazy infrastructural things. And it's important also to remember that there was a death tax, but originally before the death tax, they didn't want to give wealth to anybody after they died. They wanted to take it back to the state. Alexander Hamilton, death tax. He wanted 100% death tax.
Well, this is the same Hamilton,
right? Yeah,
because
he was because the thing is, at the time, it wasn't normal for serfs to carry on property, and he was black. I know you see these pictures, but he was from Haiti, and he was familiar with former serfdom and the idea that slaves were higher than serfs. Slaves could, first off, a lord owed a slave what they did not owe to a serf. If a slave was hurt, they had to take care of a slave. If a slave was retired, they have to take care of a slave. If a slave of a child, if a serf is born, a villein has to take care of the serf, but not really. If a serf is born, a villein has to tax a serf, is all. So serfs are lower. And so indentured servitude of serfs lower than a slave because you don't get any retirement package of being a slave. So Hamilton was like, this is the way of things. We shouldn't have anyone leaving wealth to their children because that's going to build up these new monies who are going to fight with the old lords. And we need to have an infrastructural system that keeps this oligarchy in place because these are generationally invested families, right? And that's basically the begining of that. Meanwhile, you've got in the 18th century. Okay.
Sorry, before you skip Hamilton,
yeah,
I've always sort of understood that he's the first one who wanted to open a central bank, basically open up the first Federal Reserve, and have foreign investors. I have a feeling that he was a British spy. I mean, right? I mean, you know how he had a duel with the vice president. What's his name? And
William Burr
was killed. Yeah,
right.
William Burr. And Burr was the one who saw the scheme. Like, this guy trying to open a central bank and trying to infiltrate trying to establish a debt collecting system.
Why does it want me to say Bill Burr so bad?
Bill Burr!
That's crazy.
Remember the milk commercial? The
Aaron Burr? Is it Aaron Burr? Is that what I'm doing wrong here? Aaron Burr. Wow.
Aaron Burr.
Aaron Burr.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of Bill Burr. That's pretty good. Bill Burr killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel. He's like, I can't stand you anymore. Okay.
So Aaron Burr, I mean, a lot of people hated him, but at the time he really was a straight lace. So he was very not to say conspiratorial, but he knows something was going wrong with the direction with the banking.
Well, so the Knights of the Golden Circle kind of pop up about this point. And so what you have is people that were old wealth that had been created by the colony system from Portugal, from Spain, from Morocco, but also from England and Scotland. And particularly after Drake, the connections between them start to cross hairs. And so you get these Barbary princes. So people that look kind of white, but are partially persons of color. This is what Ben Franklin, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson passed. George Washington passed, at least publicly. Alexander Hamilton, I don't know. He might have just powdered his face, but a lot of these characters tried to look white because there was a point when the treaty between Queen Elizabeth and Morocco treaty, they created a treaty, not that one, 1600s. The Anglo-Moroccan alliance. And so they were thinking, hey, you don't like Spain, we don't like Spain, we got a lot to work on here. Unfortunately, things didn't really work out because of this, because people associate the Spanish with the Moors, and that's why Shakespeare has characters like in Othello, there's this black guy, and he's the bad guy essentially, or he's an exploited guy.
So this is the same Queen Elizabeth that John Dee scried for.
Correct.
Yeah.
And super into Arab mysticism, Islamic mysticism, is associated and says she's descendant from Muhammad, Solomon, right? And
So
this
yeah,
is the way
why is there this like truce? Why like what is the exopolitical thing?
Spain is trying to invade England, Cordoba Caliphate.
Well, they
Spain
have
is
trying to
controlled at
dominate.
this point.
They're trying to dominate the seas. That's when they're going to reach the new land, new territories.
This is Spain today, right? But the King of Leon is up here, and at this point, Cordoba was part of the Cordoba Caliphate, which connected to the Amman Caliphate, right?
Which we've got Africa right below there, right?
Yeah. So but then you've got the Berbers and and if you think about it, what's crazy is Spain and Africa actually have tunnels between themselves right here. So yeah, there are Berber macaw monkeys that live in what's that place called? Gibraltar, right?
Yeah. There's tons of monkeys there. Very aggressive monkeys.
Right. But they say that the monkeys have been there and came down south, perhaps because there were monkeys in Scandinavia that left after the Campi Flegrei volcano went off, and the ones that survived are living in Gibraltar now.
I don't think so. I think they're from Africa.
Well, there are Berber monkeys from Africa, but the thing is, there were monkeys, and we have monkeys all over Europe, and it shows that they were brought on boats by Berbers who were part of these Viking pirate trade groups. So basically,
we see that Berberi pattern in Scotland, right?
Yeah, and that's another thing. Goatskin bagpipes come from Africa. Plaid comes from Botswana. Tartan comes from Botswana. So, but the thing is, you've got this guy all of a sudden, Abd al-Uwad ben Muswad or whatever. He's the inspiration for the Iago character in Shakespeare, who's the guy who's manipulative and he's messing up the good possible relationships between Othello, the Moor, and the Anglo Queen character. So this all begins the problems, and then you've got the Barbary wars late by the 19th century that kind of conclude this, right? Which is the destruction of the Barbary princes. But so many of these characters are basically Barbary princes. They're partially British, partially French or Portuguese, and they're partially African or Berber or something, and maybe indigenous, because this is all. I mean, at this point, 60% of persons of color in the Western Hemisphere speak Portuguese, because they were brought in, and slaves married with landowners, right? Or slave masters or whatever they're called. So this led to a completely different culture than we're aware of. And we're like, why doesn't this exist in the South? And it's because of the destruction of the Confederacy in the South, right? So when you think about the United States, originally, it was a confederacy. The Confederate Papers, 1770s. Before 1791, there was no Federalist United States. There was no federal constitution. There was a confederacy, Articles of Confederation. And the South wanted to continue with this idea. And they were like, why are we allowing the United States to become the America, right? It used to be like the European Union. And this is what's happening to Europe right now as well. Europe is becoming a singular state. And some states don't want to be part of that. Poland's kind of rejected it, right? But there's a bloc that's forming in Europe, right? The Eastern Bloc. Well, this was the South Bloc, the Southern Bloc. And they were saying, we're not going to go along with this. So they continued making their own currencies, which was part of the original United States. You made your own currencies for every state. You didn't allow for the federal printing. And they made their own laws. They created their own constitution, which was based on the original constitution. And then they separated themselves. But this gets back into the Pinkertons, because we talked about jobs, right? And what are the jobs that start to exist when you train robbers? The train companies start hiring detectives. And the word private eye, even, right? The word private eye, kind of, you can say private investigator, but PI, Pinkerton and eye, private eye, because their symbol is this eye. Right?
I saw the original logo they had was an eye. They never sleep, right?
Their original slogan is "We never sleep." Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they had women working for them that would spy and make friends with the train robbers' wives, and then they would get information. They had all sorts of secrets. But, this is a little later on. When they first started, what's interesting is Alan Pinkerton was Irish order, right? Glasgow. Scott. He's Scottish. So he was Scottish, and he was a member of the Order of the Pug. So the North Irish Order of the Pug is a Catholic organization that's allowed to be Freemasonic.
They all have really bad asthma.
They have to wipe their nose.
To know somebody, you got to find the person who brings. If you want to join, you got to find somebody who sounds like total garbage.
I mean, start looking at all the pictures of dead celebrities with pugs, but also living ones, and you start to look into the Order of the Pug.
Also, Men in Black. Too,
Yeah,
I have to draw a pug for like a whole 2 years because I worked on Men in Black, the series. I got really good at drawing pugs. The Frank the Pug. Remember Frank?
Actually, Eddie, I would love a drawing of a pug someday. I just want to know. I want you to know if you're ever thinking like, what would Andreas look like? I would put that on my wall right next to my Podesta statues.
Oh wow, you got a collection.
Not yet, but the 3D printer, eventually we'll figure it out. No.
Another thing I want to add is pugs. You know where they came from, right?
Degeneracy.
No. Yeah, well,
where we all come from, right, Eddie?
Yeah.
That's like 1,000 years.
Let's be honest. It's two ugly dogs that are forced to have sex with each other. But on top of that,
so pitiful. Look at their goddamn faces.
They came from China. You know that, right? They came from Beijing.
They were made to make the emperor laugh. That was the whole thing. Like they're like that. They wanted to breed a dog that would like the emperor found favor and made funny, and it was just like.
This is the one that always gets me. Here's the Bull Terrier 1915, and here's what we've done to it. And so it tells you that this is what happens from inbreeding. And yeah, I don't know.
They're like, we like what you got here, but can you just make it look totally retarded?
It's not on purpose, though. I think it's just that. I mean, this is probably what. I mean, humans have pretty flat faces. I'm just saying.
It almost looks like a possum.
So there's something to this, but yeah, the idea that dogs are royal. And that the royal dog represents the Scottish Terrier represents the Queen. For a long time, this was associated with the Queen of Scots and with King James of the Scots, right? That's the Scottish Terrier, right? But the Order of the Pug is often associated with Catholic Scots or North Irish that are still allowed to be part of the Freemasons, even though they were Catholic. And some South Irish too. I mean, just in general. And Pinkerton, he brought that over to the West. Now, at the time, you've got the Confederacy deciding that they're going to be their own country. Lincoln assassination attempt. Someone tried to kill Lincoln, right? And the conspiracy theory was it was the Jesuits because it were these two Italian guys. Come on, load my internet. The Baltimore plot. I think that's the one, right? And it was, Pinkerton guy overheard the conversation between, what are their names, man? Cipriano Fernandini, a hairdresser from Corsica, Napoleon's country, right? Today, Corsica is a very important weapons trading spot, but it's always been. And but he's only one of the main characters. You've also got the Marshal of the Police, and you've got friend of Lincoln, who at the time. So you've got these kind of assassin characters, and Kate Warren, a Pinkerton agent, who figured this out. So when this happens, Abraham Lincoln freaks out, and I got to go back to the Synchronous paper. Oh, actually, it's Abraham Lincoln Pinkerton picture, but Eddie posted this picture earlier. That was really interesting. After this, the Pinkertons and Lincoln are inseparable, and Alan Pinkerton himself is personally hired. And this is how the Pinkertons build the FBI. The FBI is built out of the Pinkertons eventually, but he has complete control over America, and it's crazy. Also look how weird an alien Lincoln looks, right? Lincoln always just looks like not human. But he doesn't ever look human to me. He's always
a gangly, very bizarre looking creature,
to say the least. Yeah, I mean, that's just, it's hard to believe. Whatever.
I still believe that he's part Rothschild.
Yeah, unless he's just a Disney robot that travels through
Yeah,
time.
I was gonna say it almost looks like one of those marionette, like that's the rope that's holding him up. If they didn't
Right.
have that there, you'd just see him like.
But notice he's not got his hand in his pockets while they have their hands in their pockets around him. So like the whole thing is just like Lincoln is this patsy. And Lincoln's put in after
You're
the
referring to the
anti-Mason.
hidden hand.
Right, hidden hand.
Yeah.
Sorry if I wasn't clear that everyone around him's got a hidden hand,
Yeah, and the one on the right, what's his name? John, Muck something, Muck. But Pinkerton he's an abolitionist, right? He supports the abolitionist movement,
right? But remember what we just said about slavery. Slaves, you owe a slave owner owes a slave retirement. A worker is not owed these things. A serf is not.
And the one on the right, he's I don't read so much about it. He's an anti-abolitionist. he didn't want
anti-abolitionist.
He's more like trying to make the South more cohesive.
Meanwhile, in North Scotland and in areas where the Scots are started to move out into the United States and the Appalachian areas, you also have Irish that are refusing to bow to the new crown, that are still loyal to the Jesuits, that are now conspired to supposedly try to kill Lincoln. And so there's a new kind of thing that starts to happen. And they think, hey, what if we do the thing they do in Russia, but with the Irish? And they have a hard time with it. And so what they decide is what we're going to do is we'll take a Peruvian potato, monocrop it, make sure it all fails as much as possible, but even if it doesn't, just make sure they have no access to it. Sell the potatoes, make sure they don't have it. Keep them off the oceans and away from the seaweed so they don't eat fish or anything like that. And just like starve these people and offer them a way out. The only way out is they get on a boat and they go to the United States and then they have to join the army. Right. And so then you get all these Irish serfs and then they get to come to America. You sign a piece of paper that says, here, your family can stay. Here's some bread for your wife and kids. Here is your 8-year, indentured servitude to the United States Army Company. And you get on a train or you walk down the way and you're wearing, you've heard of shoddy. You guys know about shoddy army outfits? This is fun. You ever heard that's really shoddy material. Have you ever heard it's really shoddy?
Yeah, right. Shoddy.
You know what that means? So shoddy is a company that existed for the Yankees. They got a bunch of old lint, like the stuff that breaks apart, and they glued it together to make these felt uniforms. Really pretty, dyed in blue. They look nice. As soon as they walked out into the rain, the glue started to come apart. And all of a sudden they had just battalions of people that were like naked because it was just wasting away on them into their, their underpants.
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You know what they used to make glue back in the days, right?
Horses.
Yeah, exactly. Horses, yeah.
Yeah, so you shoot your horse and you make some glue, and so it just gets worse and worse.
Taking it to the old glue factory. I made some shoddy looking Muppets actually.
Oh yeah, we should look at that. Let me go back. Look at this. This is actually some of the art that Zach's been making with AI art. This is actually what happens when a radium is taken by a Muppet. It's a horrible thing that happens to their lower jaw and throat. So you be careful.
Yeah, that's yeah. they've all got little prompts and stuff, but in my story I've got some these are mainly like that was Blab Tamlin.
Buddy Murphy guest stars on tonight's season finale of My Pal Morky. New Team 99. These are pretty good. I like these characters. My God,
they're fun. Yeah, they're fun.
Dude, the medical world. There's something to this. There's definitely a show that can happen. The Confederate Conscripts Act was designed.
Go to the story. That's where the Civil War.
Where's the story? In feed.
Yeah, just on the click on the icon, my icon, and it'll show the.
Oh, here you go.
So these are some, the War of Northern Aggression era Muppets that have been recolorized from black and white photos.
Nice. I like it. They lost their eyes, but also important that you said War of Northern Aggression. So every time you ever hear Civil War, you got to remember it wasn't. And the actual term is the War of Northern Aggression. Yeah. Wow. That is exactly what happened. And they commandeered their homes. And you don't even want to know what they did to Miss Piggy. As Kermit just watch Confederate Conscription Act. So if you were in the South and you're like, oh man, you're going to be forced to join the war, right? Like, this is crazy, right? Like, they're going to draft you to fight. That wasn't really what was going on. So check this out. The United States Yankee invasion battle, I don't know, any picture will help, will bring in 1,000 Irishmen to 100 or to 50 Southerners. They'll draft them. They'll force all these people because they couldn't get enough people from the North who knew how to fight, and they were losing a lot. Like, the North lost all the time, but they would bring in just so many people. And then, imagine, so you're sitting at home and you hear gunshots outside your home, and all of a sudden you hear people screaming, and you go outside and there's cannons, and your house is like, your sister's dead, and like next to you, your neighbor's house is gone and everything. And so what do? So that's the Confederacy. And they're on their own property. It's home versus visitors. And the visitors sometimes don't even speak English because there's that far out Irish, right? You've got like the word, like you heard of the Gangs of New York. Gangs of New York, the term the Dead Rabbits, or the name of the gang, Dead Rabid, is Gaelic for tough guys. And so you had a lot of these guys who couldn't even speak English, right? And they would fight against, in New York, you had people that could, and they started to assimilate. And that's how you have Irish assimilation. But at this point, you had groups that weren't assimilated. So they were forced in, they were murdered. And you'd kill 20 guys. And then one guy, 25th guy along, shoots you and you die, right? But that's the end of you. There's no more of you. And they keep coming. Because all of these Irishmen are dying. They're starving in Ireland. They just keep sending them. And so this is the perfect confluence to completely destroy the South, right? And then you've got Sherman March. So when you think about the South before the war, I don't know if it sticks out to you, but like
it's like Braveheart. You just get all these crazy Irish conscripts, just get them off the island and just them into meat grinder.
I don't want to say beautiful women of the South, but just beautiful South. Louisiana, Georgia, any place you look at. There's incredible, beautiful, Athenian,
genteel,
Roman.
Yeah, you had these
everywhere, and you had infrastructure, and you can think about like the train system. So Saint Denis,
old money. Yeah, you have this
right.
term, old money, that all this stuff is connected to.
In Red Dead Redemption, they show you they have electric trolleys. There were electric trolleys in the Confederate times.
Right now, I'm just watching the news, and it's just gaining momentum. The whole reparation. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but sure. A lot of these structures were built, by, there's a lot of slave labor involved. I mean, I'm not talking about just the cotton pickers, but we're talking about like actual, even the railroad was built by the Chinese at the time, right? But,
right. Let's talk about reparations. Slavery in the United States. Who's the first slave? First enslavement. What's it? Edmondson, right? First slave Edmondson, something like that. On Edmondson. No, keep going. You guys keep going for a second. I'll find the one.
I mean, I don't think we have a frame of reference for what like a scary world it was, with people like all over just being like kidnapped or like shanghaied in Portland into a ton. And like you wake up, you get knocked out with some ether or banged on your head, and you wake up and you're in shackles. It's like, fortunately, there's not as much of that. I'm sure there is human trafficking, but it's not. I mean, it's like you would hear.
1600. Anthony Johnson, first owned slave, a black Angolan known for achieving wealth in the early 17th century colony of Virginia. So this is the first slave owner in the United States. He was a black Angolan. He was one of the first African Americans whose right to own a slave for life was recognized by the Virginia courts. Maybe there was some before him, but as far as I know, this is the first I've heard of. Held as an indentured servant in 1621, he earned his freedom after several years, and he was granted land by the colony. He later became a tobacco farmer in Maryland. He attained great wealth after completing his term as an indentured servant, and has been referred to as the Black Patriarch of the first community of the Negro properties owners in America. Now, a conclusion of indentured servitude, case or lawsuit. Here we go. When Anthony Johnson was released from slavery, he legally was recognized as a free Negro. He became a successful farmer in 1651. He owned 250 acres. He had services of 5 indentured servants, 4 white and 1 black. In 1653, John Kacer, a black indentured servant whose contract Johnson appears to have bought in early 1640s, approached Captain Goldsmith, claiming his indentured had expired 7 years earlier, and that he was being held illegally by Johnson. A neighbor, Robert Parker, intervened and persuaded Johnson to free Kacer. Parker offered Kacer work, and he signed a term of indenture to the planter. Johnson filed a freedom suit against Parker in the Northampton court in 1654 for the return of Kacer. The court initially found in favor of Parker, but Johnson appealed. In 1655, the court reversed its ruling, finding that Anthony Johnson still owned John Kacer. The court ordered that he be returned, with the court due paid by Robert Parker. This was the first instance of a judicial determination in the 13 colonies holding that a person who had committed no crime could be held in servitude for life. Though Kacer was the first person who had declared a slave in civil case, there were both black and white indentured servants sentenced to lifetime servitude before him. Many historians describe indentured servant John Punch as the first documented slave for life in America as punishment for escaping his captors. But John Kacer is legally owned. So interesting, because it comes from Moorish Angola cultural law. Anthony Johnson is continuing what he found to be common, and the United States had no precedent for it up until 1600. When they introduce it. Up to this point, all you have is indentured servitude. And indentured servitude is completely different. It's horrible in a lot of ways, right? You're trading 7 years of your life for a boat ride, but it happens. So I don't know. But yeah, I feel like that's an important thing to understand about slavery.
Well, it's I just don't know when this is gonna. Well, it's just the beginning. This whole it's starting to scare me a little bit, because if you look at San Francisco, they just trying to pass a legislation to award slave descendants $5 million each. But California never was a slave state, and then here comes the taxpayers got to conjure up with this $52 billion or more, of our tax money.
Yeah,
I just don't know. I mean, it just I understand, but geez, I mean, how did he even fathom the amount, the 5 million?
So remember this thing, like California Beach seized property from black family in 1924 and set to return to descendants. But now that family's selling the property back to the city.
They want to make money. They don't want the land. They say, give me the money.
Right. So it's not like anything's changing ever again. It is what it is at this point, and there's no way to defeat the infrastructure. It's like it's a problem. But okay, so I was trying to point out that Sherman had looked at the South as this opulent Parisian. You can't compare it to anything. There's nothing as beautiful as the South. The South was so incredible. It lit up at night. I guess the only thing you compare it to is Spain before the Inquisition. It was like Cordoba, I guess. It's just so immaculate with crystal and trains and you would be in Florida camping, and then all of a sudden you'd be in the Confederacy in some part of Louisiana and be like, what the heck? I'm time traveling to the future kind of thing. And so Sherman walked through and just destroyed all of it. And they did this by using cannonballs that would just completely level cities. They would melt train tracks, etc. Now, some people say these stories are probably exaggerated. It might have had to have been natural disasters that caused the damage. I think that sets precedent for how bad whatever they did was, but also it's possible that there were also natural disasters that destroyed this former state. And after the Civil War, they forced these places for 16 years to go through districting, where they were militarized and an entire new government was installed in these places. So nobody remembers the South. Nobody knows really what it was like before they destroyed it. I think that's important to understand.
Just recently, I got fascinated by the subject of the Seminole Wars. The Seminoles, the Indians, who are they're kind of descendants of mixed black and Indians, right?
Yeah, but they were not American Indians in the same way, or that was the charge, right? That the Seminoles are like, oh yeah, you're doing a different thing,
right? Because there's a thing called the Confederacy.
Florida was being purchased already at that point. I forgot. Florida was the Spanish territory, right? Until what year? Until the U.S. The federal government purchased it, or was it surrendered?
Purchased. Which place are you talking about? Florida?
Oh, Florida, yeah.
Florida, I think, is purchased. I forget when. That's why, Mr. Longo. We were hoping to have you at some point. We'll have to do it another time.
Yeah,
Mr.
I know there's
Longo
lots
in
of
Florida
people
knows.
that would be able to kind of claim they were Seminole at the time too. Kind of now like everybody's Cherokee, I guess.
It's just,
right?
I think the thing is, it offends a lot of people because the idea that there was a trade network that existed between natives that included Africa, the Caribbean, like Canada, that's really difficult for the what's it called, right? The manifest destiny thing. Like, oh, well, you guys didn't know what you were doing, so we can take it over. Doesn't work if you've got connections all across the Caribbean and you've literally building a community that is, yeah. And that's also Andrew Jackson's charge, is destroy the native culture.
Yeah. He because he invaded Florida on the pretext of capturing the Confederate rebels, right? Yeah, and but instead it invaded the swamplands of these natives. So,
what was it called? New Japanifornia map of New Prussia. Is that it? This is it. Okay, so in Life magazine, sorry, I'm glad that they found it. 1916, right before 1917, right? So World War I. They made this map. And like, if we don't do something, the barbarians will take the north, and then the province of Mexico will be controlled by the Turks and Austriana, and Florida will become Draconia, right? But what's interesting, and Dr. Longo's pointed this out, is that this stuff actually makes a lot of sense. Constantinople Junction, these kinds of jokes, the Keys, West Turkeys, that these areas, they have flags, they have peoples that are clearly connected from the former empire that existed before the, this Columbus period that we've made up. And that this was all connected. Yeah.
There's an interesting thing. If this is 16, because then we hear about, remember the Alamo and all that. That's 1800. So, like, Mexico show. I mean, it should be up where Nietzsche is, or wow, like, what is Nietzsche? Is that San Antonio?
Yeah. Is that San Antonio? Yeah. So by the Alamo. That's really weird.
I mean, that's a synchronicity and a half right there. Remember the Alamo, but does this Prussian map mean that there's a network of people that like basically like, oh, they're in our pocket? So
Nietzsche
we can
is the Alamo
basically
God
like,
is dead. That's so messed up. This is such
like
a funny map.
all the people that are trading and farming and all the different routes, like, they're in our pocket. So this is the map. This is like a conquesting imperial map,
They're also saying though this is kind of the way things were when the Ottomans and the Turks were part of the Austro-Hungarian. It really was an Austro-Turkish empire, and so that they were connected with the Berbers, and the Berbers were connected with the Caribbean, and the Algonquin and the Seminoles.
Denverburg. Come on, Denverburg. I'm calling BS on Denverburg. I can actually attest to the fact that my
it could happen.
My great its uncle, his picture is in the Capitol, is the reason that Denver is named Denver.
Denver.
My brother and my father both have the Denver middle name, but he was the circuit rider that was he was going out west, and they said if he started this post, they'd name the city after him. James Denver.
Not bad.
James Denver is the guy's name. This is real. This is legit.
Was born in Roswell, New Mexico.
I was disappointed that his real name isn't Denver.
There he is. That's him.
Yeah.
So that's
I can see the resemblance. If you shaved, you look just like this.
Yeah, him. Let me go.
Don't do it. Don't shave. Yeah. But that's cool. The stoic face is good.
Yeah,
man. Actually, especially like right. Yeah, I could when you make your lips go down. You do the lip thing. That's crazy.
Yeah, right.
So the Confederacy included natives. The Seminoles were their own confederacy. All the 5 civilized tribes had their own confederacy. We got the idea of the Confederacy from them, and then we continued it, and then the Confederates continued it on, and then the Federalists tried to destroy it, and that's when Lincoln goes nuts, because Lincoln is the gnarliest dictator. Actually, what's that movie? Abradolf Linkler from Rick and Morty is a real thing. Like, if you think about it, Abradolf Linkler. There you go. I mean, everyone's like, "Oh man, like two juxtaposition things. Like, what would it be like for a guy who wanted to kill all of the other side and enslave everybody? What would it be like for a guy who's like, oh, it was Lincoln, right? But Lincoln, who suspends habeas corpus, can arrest anybody for any reason. There's actually a point when people vote for him and they arrest everyone who votes against him for polluting ballot boxes. Lincoln arrested people for polluting ballot boxes with other people's votes than his own.
Do you know a similarity between Lincoln and Adolf Hitler?
I have a couple, but yeah.
They're both allegedly love child of the Rothschilds.
Oh yeah, that's
right?
true. Again,
Well,
it all comes back. Because
they're
it's
all
true.
Rothschilds.
That's true. That is a true. You know what?
Hitler had one nut, and then I think Lincoln nutted once because his wife was a lesbian.
Yeah, you heard this story though, right?
Really?
Interesting. Yeah, and she was a Rothschild. She was a Rothschild as well. So he married his cousin or something like that. So the other thing is that Hitler's
Todd was
Hitler's mother, Alois. Is that right? Alois, or is it Hitler's grandmother? No, it's Hitler's mother, Alois Heidler. I think I got this right. Is his grandmother?
She had a tough go. She was real young.
Anna Maria Schicklgruber, Alois Heidler. Alois Heidler was the father. He's not his real father because Anna Maria Schicklgruber worked for Mayor Rothschild. When she left Mayor Rothschild's estate, she was pregnant and with a pension of 1,000 marks a month, which is pretty substantial.
Wasn't she like 12 or 13
even now, that'd be
when she was pregnant? Wasn't she like real young?
Funny, you know?
She was pretty young. I think she was 15, but she might have been 13. I don't know if she was that young, but she might have been.
Yeah.
Anywho, Hitler didn't want his name on the birth certificate, so they made Hitler up. So he doesn't even get Heidler's name. So there's a lot going on with that. And the fact that he had money and etc. Okay. Bankers, though, what are you going to do? So Lincoln ballot box, though, he said that anybody who voted against him was polluting ballot boxes. He also arrested people that were part of the Knights of the Golden Circle. He tried to destroy anybody that was supportive of this any state rights themselves, because up to this point every state was in charge of themselves. He removed governors. They installed new governance, and then eventually when he was assassinated, you have this cool guy, in my opinion, Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson was the president after. He's the vice president. He's pretty chill. He was an anti-Mason, and he'd been a slave, actually been an indentured servant, and had worked his way out, escaped, something to that effect. So he had a lot of thoughts on slavery, indentured servitude, and he tried to stop the Emancipation Proclamation.
You'll have to help me out real quick. The G on the flag of the Spanish country, I couldn't help but notice that, and the symbolism of a flag with a G, and if they're going to become the anti-Mason party. It was one picture that you had up as far as the Strait of Gibraltar, and they were
it's Gibraltar. It's not it's not Gimel. It's Gibraltar.
Yeah, but with the G, there was a red flag with a G on it in one of the paintings that you just happen to have up. I don't know.
I don't remember.
Yeah. It's fine. But it caught my eye. I wanted to say something at the time, but it's sorry,
I moved so fast.
It's okay. It's interesting, interesting information. And so it's but those little details, those little things, if it's the anti-Mason party and like there's this, depiction of something that we're,
Oh, is there something with that? The anti-Mason party?
I'm not sure.
That was my question. Was Andrew Johnson was he a member of that party?
Yeah. So what it's interesting is the anti-Mason party was 1832, and the New Whig Party 1838. It was assimilated into the American Republicanism Party, and Andrew Johnson was a strong supporter of the anti-Masons when he first was an indentured servant and was educating himself in order to become emancipated. And so he had some major understandings about what it meant to be a serf, indentured servant, and as an American, what it meant to be a free man. And he thought that these were really important things.
We're talking about getting $20 an hour, right? Who's on the $20 bill?
That's no, that's
No, that's
actually
Jackson.
Jackson.
No, that's
Jackson.
Hamilton.
Yeah,
Well,
Jackson.
Hamilton's on 10. Hamilton's on 10. Though,
Hamilton's
right?
on
Yeah.
10.
I
And
was
Grant,
thinking.
and so that actually is interesting because Grant is on the 50, and so Grant is, he was the general who was in charge of the genocide of the Confederacy and the Irish, and he really didn't like it. His dad was Hiram Grant, the Freemason president of the law, 33rd Law, blah 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 blah, friends with Albert Pike kind of stuff, and he drank his way through the war. And then 4 years after Johnson, or 3.5, when Johnson left office, they tried so hard to get rid of him the entire time, and they sidestepped him. Johnson's the first president to be double vetoed by Congress, and then they installed all these puppet dictatorship governments across the South with these fake leaders that weren't even. It was a complete farce. Then they put in Grant, and God, what's the other guy's name? William Brady, I want to say. Civil War. Is that right? William Brady, soldier, economist. Yeah, that's right. His plan was, let's create 5 districts to control the South. We're going to put soldiers on every corner after the war indefinitely. We'll watch them. We'll force them to go to our schools. We'll replace their police with our soldiers. We'll replace their school teachers with our teachers. We'll completely take over their infrastructure. We'll burn their money. We'll burn their books. We'll make them use ours. And that's how the South was assimilated for the next 16 years. And the entire time, Grant just drank, and he was completely unconscious for most of the time. And the Congress ran the government. And that's,
Is that why so many artists hope for a federal grant now? Like, that's
interesting thing there. Yeah.
Andreas, so during the George Floyd riots, right? I mean, his statue was targeted too, right? Right, Ulysses Grant. What exactly was the motive of that they want to take down his statue? I mean, he wasn't a slave owner.
I think any statue of was it Grant that they were taking down statues?
It was one of them.
Was it Robert E. Lee?
It was Robert
E. Lee. Yeah, both of them. Both of their statues were taken down, right?
I don't think Grant's was.
I guess Grant was defaced, I guess.
Grant's had federal protection, and they're like, it's cool. They were working with.
He was a slave owner in that he was gifted a slave, hated the idea, and freed him within a year. But because he was a slave owner, his statue was defaced. I don't know. I don't know what you want. I mean, point is, they destroyed the anti-Mason party. The Whig party folded. They became the Republican Party. And so when people talk about parties switching, this is the first switch. This is the first switch from the Democrats to the Republicans, really. And then the second one is in World War II, just about, right after this. But Johnson was not a bad president in a lot of ways. He tried to stop the Emancipation Proclamation, and he tried to stop the first 13th Amendment, because he pointed out that the Emancipation Proclamation didn't actually free slaves. It only freed slaves in rebelling states and had perimeters for it. So imagine the slaves that were in areas that found out that the Emancipation Proclamation didn't save them, because it was clearly defined by fat cat moneymakers who were trying to make sure that the slaves weren't saved. And also the idea that the 13th Amendment, when you read it, it doesn't actually free anybody. It says everyone is subject to the same obligations. And he's like, whoa, this is going to remove the rights of all American citizens. We need to rewrite this to include the rights that say everyone is given rights, or is
unalienable.
Yeah, we respect and do not disturb the rights of all citizens, something like that. And they were like, no, we're going to rush this through. You're the bad guy. So they built this entire system all in order to take away the rights of, and again, at the time, the South was the 3rd largest economy in the world. And so they completely decimated that, and they took it over, and they made sure that it was a controlled asset, right?
Well,
interesting.
Okay, so you want to talk about the Golden Circle again, because we haven't really.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth. It's probably worth it. Do you want me to jump in? Do you have any things you want to say?
No, I just because I feel like we never really completely discussed it.
Yeah, right. Were they knights in any other orders that start with knights? in their name?
So yeah, so originally there's actually an older group that's like from Latin, and then it goes into Spanish, Circulo Dorado, which was the way the wiki points this out is always wrong, right? So that's the thing. So they're saying that a place where slavery would be legal. That's definitely not the fundamental point of this. What it is that you've got an elite group of families that have established themselves in this region from Venezuela after Napoleon into Galveston and all across, the east of Mexico.
Like the golden triangle of trade, right?
Right. And so they're saying what we're going to do is we're going to build the most powerful empire in the world, and everyone else will have to trade with us, and we'll basically own them through economy. And we've already figured out how to do that because if we own Barbados, we have all the Caribbean, we know how human trafficking works, but it's not necessarily because they want to own people per se, but there were some people that were owned. I mean, it's weird because they make the Knights of Golden Circle sound like
and like debts and like different prisons and different ways that people would get into that situation of being put on a ship. And
it's
so
just like it's like if you were saying like if there's 4 glasses of mud and you ask like what's the difference between these glasses of mud, and then someone says, well, that glass has dirt in it. It doesn't really explain anything to me. You know what I mean? So they're all doing this at this time. The North has no law against it. The South has no law against it. They're working on it in the Confederacy. Ironically, this is the other thing that people don't talk about is the Confederacy was banning slavery, emancipated, gradual emancipation.
I think the goods that they're trading are important too, because you have sugar, you have rum, like this the triangle.
So the South was actually Jefferson Davis was talking about the gradual emancipation. He wanted all slaves born after 1900 to be free, and he was going to gradually emancipate everybody in the South. So the South was already working on emancipation before the North ever came up with the idea, which is very interesting. But they were trying to figure out how to do it.
The funny thing, because now that you mentioned the sugar trade that made England very rich, when we're talking about the movie star Cumberbatch, right? Doctor Strange, right? He's admitting to his family's estate. That was it in Barbados? I think that was one of the islands his family tapped into.
Probably Barbados is like
cane.
There's some interesting documentaries I saw recently on Barbados, and they were going through, and you can find all these records of human trafficking from the 1600s where like people came through here, certain amount of years they're supposed to be owned by this person in this place. So all the ways that you can find, but the thing is, the way it's explained today versus then, it's like here you've got lists of people who are valuable, they're valued, they're acknowledged. And then all of a sudden in the 18th century, you have these weird insurance companies, which are like, it's probably better if you just let these slaves die. And they start using slavery in order to kill tons of people because they bring them from one area that they just want to empty out.
So they like buy the bad debt or something.
Right. And so this debt slavery becomes, it becomes this whole thing where you're
like
trading
in the same
back
way
and
a
forth
company
how
will
many
buy
people
our
you own.
credit card debt. It's like, oh yeah, you've got all these prisoners essentially.
Or
I'll buy your bad prisoners.
Or
It's
the way
like,
that
it's
a
like
state
shorting the
buys,
stock,
the way a
stock
state
option.
buys,
Right.
the way banks buy state debt for debt. So let's say you're Bolivia and you trade 90 years of income tax as opposed to, one lifetime of a million people or something like that. So we've literally figured out ways of fracturing the debt into pieces, so a person can be a slave and live at home, and it's far more economical that way because then you don't have to take care of the slave, you don't have to pay for in fact they pay you to live where they do, right?
Well,
and that's right back to serfdom.
There's some other interesting thing as far as the infrastructure goes in some of these places too. So like Puerto Rico, for example, in San Juan, all of the streets that are still there, they were brought there by, I think, mainly the Spanish, but I think some French ships too were coming there, and they would be empty ships until they got there. And so the bricks that became the cobblestone streets, those were to balance off the ships so they wouldn't have to retie everything and redo the ballasts. So those were what they call ballasts that would like weigh down the ship. All those like stones. Then from there they unload that and they're filling it with sugar and rum and people and spices and and so like you have all these different companies of like essentially merchant marines, right?
I mean, so these, and that's the thing. Like, I saw a ship actually in Venezuela, and how they bring it into the deck and dock it, and it's just crazy the way they have to use bricks in order to push it off the wharf. But I was going to say, with the Knights of the Golden Circle, what they did was they realized that every state was becoming an independent state that wanted to have its own autonomy and work together. And so the United States used to work this way. And in the South, you had the Bolivians, the Simon Bolivar, not just the country Bolivia, the ideology of Simon Bolivar. Bolivarian is what Venezuela's socialism is based on. It's not based on Marx. It's based on this guy, Simon Bolivar. And the way that they were trying to build their culture was kind of independent of Spain, self-determinant, self-sovereign. These are the same idea. In fact, if you go to Washington, D.C., go to Maryland today, you'll find areas named after Bolivar, right? Because we respected each other at that point. And the Knights of the Golden Circle were trying to liberate other parts of South America as well. So they were saying, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to build and continue to build the thing that we were always planning on building, the United States of, and where is this? The Americas, right? And then these
Puerto
states,
Rico still isn't like an actual state,
right?
Like,
right.
What like that's so messed up.
Puerto Rico, the Philippines at the time, right? The Philippines were stolen. The banana republics. So this is the alternative, right? So here's what happens. The Knights of the Golden Circle are saying, we're going to make sure that all of these states are confederated so that no one controls any other state, but each state can work together in order to defend the self-determination, and everything should only be up from there, right? And then simultaneously, Lincoln's saying, we should probably kill everybody who's working against us. Let me see if I can find my Lincoln picture. And we should arrest people that are polluting ballot boxes with other people's names than my own. Like, I'm freaking Saddam Hussein. And I'm sorry, because I don't even know if Saddam Hussein did that. That might just be some propaganda. Maybe Saddam Hussein was a good guy. But Abraham Lincoln, definitely not. And if you tried to mess with this, he would arrest you. You would disappear like it was Guantanamo Bay. There's no reason to arrest you. They could do it. They could just, whatever they wanted. So then they start taking over other countries with the Monroe Doctrine. And you've got Puerto Rico, you got the Philippines, you've got the United States as this America, where it's one government out of DC that controls the rest of the states. Nobody's in charge anymore. They're all, regional under the emperor. And this is the end of the United States of America. And this is the beginning of the U.S. And Uncle Sam.
Well, you know that the DC map, the DC flag has 3 stars, right? And allegedly that's symbolizing the 3 sovereign city states. We're talking about Washington D.C., Vatican, and the city of London. Finance, military, and religion, right? And that now they're trying to push for D.C. to become its independent state. That movement that's going on right now. Aside from making Puerto Rico the 51st state, but they want to make D.C. Look it up, the Washington D.C. statehood, but that's the problem.
It's on like a license plate.
Yeah, but Washington D.C. really is the only constitutional America left. I mean, everywhere else is federal land. Of the federal government.
It's ironic. If they become a state, they'll lose a lot of rights. And if they become a state and Puerto Rico becomes a state, it'll mean that all states have lost all of their rights. The thing is, not every state has a constitution. A lot of states used to be territories. California has its own constitution, which is it's because it's a swallowed empire. It's a swallowed country. Pennsylvania has
to have its own.
Right.
Yeah.
Colorado used to. Does Colorado not anymore?
I think they have their own constitution still. But I think that this
is Constitution of Colorado. So some states don't, and this is crazy, right? Or they were created afterwards, which means they're subservient to the federal constitution. A lot of states that wasn't the way it was. The Pennsylvania state constitution.
The whole thing about the Denver airport underground.
Oh yeah.
The underground government. In case
the one that's full of bear arms.
Yeah.
Poor bears.
It's just full of bear arms. It's written in the Colorado Constitution where it says all Coloradans have the right to bear arms. And they
spelled.
That's what.
They were drunk when they wrote it, and they were like, "Whoops, let it ride." No,
well, we're gonna have to make this airport a little bigger. It looks like.
The Constitution of Pennsylvania used to allow for Pennsylvania to decide everything for itself, its own elections, etc. And over the years since 1968, it's slowly been folded in until now it's just, the states. It's a better word than I was going to use. But, it has to do what the state wants it to do, whether it wants to or not. and sometimes it cries, but it does it anyway. And that's what they've done. The amended Constitution, humbly, guidance, etc. It's turned itself into something it wasn't. But there are still some statutes in these old constitutional rules that say that the federal government can't do certain things, and it just hasn't been pushed yet because most of these states know the last time it was pushed, every other state was genocided. Their cities were destroyed. They took everyone. And after the Civil War, again, the War of Northern Aggression, because it wasn't a civil war. Civil war is a war between one nation, right? This is a 2-nation deal. And this is a bunch of states that say, we're not going to go along with this mutiny that Lincoln's doing. We're going to continue being our own states. And so when Lincoln does that, all these states decide we're going to continue on our own. They have their own money, their own constitution, et cetera, et cetera. Afterwards, they're forced to reapply to become states of the new United States of America. So they can't go to the Congress building. They can't be states unless the other states vote them back in. So they don't exist as states, right? And it takes like several years. It takes like 2 years for all the states to finally be readmitted back into the Union. So, I mean, everything about our story about whether this is a civil war or not, it's not a civil war. It's completely not. And that proves it. If every state had to apply back in, that means they weren't states in that union, right? That's kind of what that proves. But
it's just a central bank war. That's all it is.
Right. But the Knights of the Golden Circle were really powerful all across the United States, to the point that when their leader was arrested, the Confederates and the Yankees in Pennsylvania put on they took off their uniforms and put on black outfits like Antifa, and then they went out together, stopped fighting against each other, and they worked together to take over their equipment and to bomb the prison and to get him out. So, they were a very powerful group, and
that's
people don't realize.
Wild stuff. That's a wild tale.
Right.
I look like Buffalo Bill. Look at him. Did I have that crazy mullet?
My mother ran a bed and breakfast for years in Golden, where Buffalo Bill was rumored to have had tea with the woman that owned the house. Which I always had a funny sync with Buffalo Bill, because I'd dig in the backyard and I'd find like Colt revolver barrels and like antique like Listerine bottles and like really cool old shit from the 1800s.
Buffalo Bill was brilliant because we should do this. I knew a guy who went to Germany. I knew a guy in Germany in the 70s and 80s. He made like millions of dollars being Buffalo Bill because everybody loves cowboys. And what Buffalo Bill did was he just put on these old West shows where he like pretended that they were cowboys.
He hired a lot of American Indians. He gave a lot of jobs to a lot of people that were otherwise getting massacred and given smallpox patients.
But it was also kind of demeaning because like his work was kind of but I don't know. I like Buffalo Bill personally. I think it was a good thing.
He was a showman.
He brought.
Have you guys seen the movie A Little Big Man?
No.
With Hoffman. What's his name?
Yes.
It's a great film. I mean, it's not historically accurate, but it goes into the Buffalo Bill and goes into what's his name? The Battle of the Little Big Horn, right?
Nothing's historically accurate, right?
General Custer.
Yeah, General Custer. Yeah. Oh yes, try to assassinate Custer. That was very funny. He just,
right. Well, they had 65,000, maybe 115,000. There's a lot of freaking members of this group that existed that were like hard order. And then the thing is, their enemies were the Pinkertons, and the Pinkertons were trying to stop them. And it's interesting because the connection between the Knights of the Golden Circle and the Jacobins and the House of Orange, because they were a lot of the time Europeans that had come over and had been like maybe Dutch or something and been part of grosser mercantilism. They're part of the House of Orange connection versus the Jesuit at the time. So there was this huge fight there in the Order of the Pug. It connects back to the Order of the Pug. And it's to me also interesting because the next switchover, Republicans and Democrats, happens in the 60s. And you go to the JFK. And so JFK, Irish, Order of the Pug, Fitzgerald, part of the Normandies, all the things, all the strikes, right? So he doesn't matter. His dynasty matters. His placement in the dynasty matters. And he's maneuvered into power. And then who do we suppose make sure that all this happens too? Because he can't be president. Like, he doesn't follow the rules. He's not proper line, right? How does he skip?
Does that count as a syphilitic grin?
Maybe I think it's the ketamine.
No,
Maybe
no,
he's on like slow drip.
It's amphetamine. It's amphetamine.
It's a lot of stuff, really, is the thing. But that's fair because his body's all broken because he's been smashed through war.
I tell you what, we're gonna make Vitamolten look like a walk in the park.
But I mean, they had to because this is who else would they let be president, right? So except for someone weak enough that they can't run from them, that they can hold them exactly where they want them all the time. So it actually makes, and they have him on sex and drugs and rock and roll and everything. So, but it didn't matter because it's the 60s. And at that point, that's becoming culturally part of the American culture. Things are changing. So that's scary.
Jackie still loved him.
Yeah.
She still loved him.
Terrifying.
And everybody still wants to marry. Look at Chris Pratt. He's like the second. He's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're trying really hard to get married into the Kennedys.
Private eyes were at their biggest they'd been since the 1860s in the 1960s, and so PIs going around spying on everybody. The use by the mafia. You've got Desi Arnaz, Cosa Nostra. So the Cosa Nostra mafia connections with Desi Arnaz. His wife, who is a communist and pretended not to be a communist.
Bernays, too, because the whole thing was to humanize
Bay of Pigs.
The whole thing was to humanize Cubans.
Right. Well, so he's part of the Bay of Pigs.
Right.
His family were extremely wealthy Cubans. They were not like cheapo communists. There's a reason why he left when they were taking away money from the elite, right? Desi was the elite. And he worked with the mob. Frank Sinatra tried to have him killed at first because he didn't like what he was doing on television because he made fun of the Italians, but it was only because he was supposed to. And then Frank Sinatra's wife had an affair with him, people think, but at very least she had his life spared. He worked with the Cosa Nostra and the CIA and George Bush, W. Bush, which led to the assassination of JFK for the events in the Bay of Pigs, the Bay of Pigs destroyed.
He was really, really charismatic, and so I think the CIA found him, and that was part of that whole operation with the Banana Republic, right?
Right. So I think the CIA found him because after the McCarthy trials, you had the CIA looking at all the communists. Lucille Ball's grandfather was a communist. She became a registered communist. She was a communist, and in the Freedom of Information Act reveals later, we found out she was an ardent one. But at the time, she was able to go through the McCarthy trial as a comic and pretend that she was not. We now know that many people went to her house to have communist meetings, including Martin Luther King.
Is that why that she financed Star Trek? Because Star Trek
space communism.
It's a quintessential communism in outer space.
God, they took my Star Trek episode down.
It's a United Nations on outer space.
Right? I told them all that.
Yeah, for the greater understanding of all the information and knowledge, it's definitely a Gnostic theme because they're exploring the universe, and you see the first interracial kiss on screen with James T. Kirk, and she died just a few years ago. What was her name?
She died last year, I think. The black.
Yeah.
But the Cosa Nostra Mafia, they're able to arrange the ballot boxes across Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, a couple other states. I think even Minnesota. I forget. But Cosa Nostra had control over a lot of ballot boxes, and they were able to guarantee JFK wins the election by getting a certain amount of Electoral College ballot boxes. And so this is JFK gets elected. And they're like, all right, with the blessing of the families. And this is, a huge conspiracy. Everyone's like, wait, JFK, a Catholic in the White House, he's going to build a tunnel to the Vatican. People are freaking out. Protestants across America are freaking out that this is happening, right?
That's crazy. His whole presidency is a conspiracy. The start of it and the end of it.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can go back further and look at JFK's father, because then you look at the Prohibition era and how the FBI and the Pinkertons made this happen.
What was his boat was PT 109? JFK, the ship.
Was it?
PT 109 was the ship that JFK was on it was like a
Oh, right, the torpedo boat, right?
Where he was rescuing, he rescued
Japanese destroyer sunk.
Yeah. So,
hero,
so
right.
it's like a resonator on like one of the first like 9/11, 91 kind of like numerical sinks.
Do something with Navy and naval. I'm just saying. But okay, J. Edgar Hoover. The reason the Kennedys couldn't stand J. Edgar Hoover, Prohibition era. The family made all their money because the Pinkertons and the FBI allowed them to smuggle alcohol into the United States from Canada. The Fitzgeralds in Canada were bringing it down. And so the FBI made them millions and millions of dollars and turned them into a very wealthy family while destroying all of these upper middle class brewing families across the United States, including the amusement park breweries that we were talking about earlier, just completely just devastated the United States. But
Coors is still here. Adolf Coors. He used to burn crosses up on the mesa here in Golden. Great guy.
Springwater, Colorado Springwater. I agree. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
But so the Kennedys at this point are made into a powerful family by the Pinkertons, by the FBI, because at this point it's a grandson of the Pinkertons, like John Pinkerton or James Pinkerton. But the FBI exists, and it's a broader idea. Actually, the Pinkertons today are owned by Securitas. If you look it up, Pinkerton Securitas still exists, and so
How do you feel about the Weezer album, Pinkerton?
I don't remember what songs are on it. Remind me a couple of them. Which ones?
It was their second one. Actually, I think Pink
Triangle. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I love that album. Of course. Yeah, I think we could go into a whole other thing on Weezer, but just for time,
no.
Because the fact that Weezer is from like that weird ashram and they're raised to do like yoga all the time, like River Phoenix.
It's a funny. Pinkerton's a weird second album name. Well, they had the blue one.
Definitely weird backstory behind like meditating band. All right, so Campbell Affair, White House, etc. They decide to crack down on organized crime, the stuff that made it possible for them to get into the presidency, and that's not good because he's like these guys are clearly working together to allow certain criminals to exist, which they have to, they think, because otherwise they won't know who are the criminals. Right. So they're
paying their dues. The thing's working. Why rock the boat?
Right, and he's trying to rock the boat.
It's a good boat.
So I mean, that's the end, and then that's kind of the end of the Edgar Hoover period because George W. Bush takes over the OSS as the CIA director, and so, but his family are heavily invested in the Bay of Pigs as well.
And then Hoffa disappears, right?
Well, that's another story. That's the Union.
But it's tied into like some of these.
I wish David was here for this part because David knows Jerry. We know this guy Jerry, who is Jimmy Hoffa's son, or I think
alleged son.
Something. There's some crazy thing, but
because there was
the story is he was ground into sausage. He was ground into sausage by the Kristinovich family, and then he was sold in breakfast sausage across
bunch
California.
Of wise guys ate him for breakfast.
Yeah, real
tasty, a spicy one though.
That's what
nobody can smell it.
Yeah. But that's just the story, right? So I don't know, but it's interesting because you look at these elite like Euro Berber kind of characters, even like Fidel Castro, and how what these groups were like, and that you can see like the Knights of the Golden Circle continue on. Arguably, that's and George Bush's family, like the Bush family, were members of the Knights of the Golden
Trudeau
Circle.
family. I please don't forget Trudeau. I mean, he's absolutely genetics resemblance. Come on,
is there a picture of him holding a pug? Because if there is, then I'll know.
Find it.
Somebody let me know if we find it. I don't know if I spelled Trudeau right. Did I?
Yeah. No,
I don't know.
Does he even own a dog? That's the question.
It doesn't have to own it to hold it, but I don't know. So the thing is,
I was thinking that about those other pictures. I was like, what if other people just was like, hey, hold this dog.
I'm gonna get someone to let me hold. I'm not gonna get a whole pug to like my own. That's like no way.
Yeah.
But I mean, who doesn't want to be like, I want a fourth frame of this right here with me in it.
Hey, Chris Cornell, will you just hold my pug? Will you just hold my pug for a minute?
That'd be also cool. What if I just made like celebrities hold pugs at red
exactly, and then like
just hold this,
and then there's like a Deadpool, right? And you're like,
God.
You know what I think is a grand conspiracy? The pugs came from China, and it's the same way like Panda. They use Panda to get their way into the international diplomacy. Like, here,
Yeah.
have a panda and give me World Trade.
Right, like they're just genetically fake,
Here,
like
take this
pandas are.
animal.
Evil fake
I haven't heard
pandas.
about this.
I have a
deal.
cute
That
animal for
sounds
you
pretty
right now.
cool.
The panda being fake or the pug? Which one?
No, the panda.
I think they're both pretty fake.
Oh yeah, panda is fake. Asko and Benjamin, but it is what it
Look
is.
how much we've made things suffer genetically.
Oh, look at how sad it is.
Yeah, but the thing is, it didn't
Aw.
exist in the 1800s, and
There,
so
like, East Bamboos.
they
It doesn't
created
make any
it
sense.
to
Who
amuse
was-
the elite, and then
Who
they've
ate
devolved.
all the bamboo then?
Right?
Who's the bamboozler? Have I been bamboozled?
Do you know what a gaggle of geese? You know what a group of
Yeah.
panda is called? A group of panda?
A bamboozle?
An embarrassment of
An
pandas.
embarrassment.
An
Okay.
that's not. That's a sign.
Oh, yeah,
that is
it's
a sign-
true. Yes.
An
I
embarrassment.
looked it
of
up.
pandas.
That's right.
Do you know what an unpleasantness is?
I don't know. My
Ravens.
ex-wife.
No, it's an
Oh yeah,
unpleasant.
yeah, ravens.
A murder of
Unpleasant.
crows, an
A murder of
unpleasantness.
crows,
Yeah, a
unpleasant.
gaggle of
Oh,
geese.
no. I thought a bunch of crows is called conspiracy.
No, a murder of
No.
crows. I remember this because I was
Murder
on
crows.
a plane
Unpleasantness
train.
of ravens.
You know, like I was on like the monorail, like to a plane, and I was like going by, and there was like a murder of crows, and there's this guy standing there on the train with me. I'm like, oh man, a murder of crows, that sucks. And I'm thinking to myself, on one hand, it sucks because like it's scary to fly right before you see a weird synchronicity of a murder of crows. But on the other hand, I just told this guy murder of crows. He has no idea what I am or who I am or what I'm talking about, and he's
Yeah.
terrified now. So
I
I
bet.
feel like that's all, you know. So it's terrible. But
At least you didn't invite him to because it's weird. It's a circle jerk of hummingbirds.
God, dude,
Don't,
Catholic
don't
order.
ask me why.
The Catholic Order of Pugs. Then you've got George Bush Sr. And if I just find this interesting at this point, because you got the same thing in the Civil War, you got the Order of Pugs and the Pinkerton, and now again during the Civil Rights Movement with with Martin Luther King, MLK, and his whole thing. Because like remember, Martin Luther King raped people and watched reverends rape younger girls. MLK rape
I need to see
allegations.
some pictures.
Sealed FBI audio tapes allege Martin Luther King Jr. had affairs with 40 women. Watch while a friend raped a woman. Report claims. Go deeper and deeper and deeper, and you'll find nothing but sorrow.
But you never know with any of this stuff because of honeypots and like
They honeypotted
the
the hell out of him and they recorded him all the time, and they knew what he was up
Yeah.
to. Meanwhile, Malcolm X, they were like, "Whoa, we got to get our lives in line. This guy's a saint. I'm gonna look into Islam." All these Mormon kids were confused because they'd never heard a guy who'd never sinned before. Malcolm X was a hero, but Martin Luther King, he was a rapist. That's just what
they were
the
like, all right,
documents reveal.
Malcolm X is talking about these 72 virgins. Here's the deal: would you settle for 40?
Jesus,
It's totally cool. Well, you could come over. We're not gonna film you. This is not blackmail
that
at
does
all.
sound like the FBI. It's true. I mean, God, and because Edgar Hoover was a transvestite. Edgar Hoover, transvestite.
So is
and that's how they control.
So is
him.
Giuliani, right?
Do you think this has
Cross-dressing.
anything to do with
So is Giuliani.
Bohemian Grove?
Yeah, probably. Bohemian Grove is interesting in and of itself at that time. Grove. If
I
you think
loved
about,
looking at that map that you had up. That looked like the map that you'd see at, like dental offices and like
Oh
it
yeah,
was like all
Thomas
like,
has that. Paranoid American.
like
I'll ask him to send me the
dorky,
map.
Like it looks
thing
like
about-
those 80s and 90s, like there'd be one of your town and it's like all hokey with their different names for their cabins and
I've really for a long time I've wanted to make a musical. Kurt, get in on this with me and Zach and Eddie. You can help me too. They're the music guys. Eddie, you help me with the writing. It's called Taft. And it's Taft the musical. It's just about President Taft, and he's a werewolf. And Taft was crazy because he would break the bathtub once a month. So like the
'cause he was
biggest
so
bathtub.
fat. Yeah,
But he would get small, like a werewolf, and the smaller moon, smaller werewolf, and by the bigger moon, bigger Taft,
I
and
got it.
eventually, so he would destroy the bathtub, and eventually, people would make fun of him all the time, but he's kind of interesting. Like he replaced the garage, the farm barn with a garage for motor cars. First president to do that, but like people treated him like crap, and he'd read all this negative stuff. And his favorite time of year was to get to go to Bohemian Grove. I just think it would be like a really cool movie. Like you see him like the last few days of work before he's going to Bohemian Grove, and how he has to suck it up to all these people and be this, fat president. But then he gets to Bohemian Grove. He takes the train. Once he gets to Bohemian Grove, it's just like he gets to let loose. He's wearing like a nightgown, running through the woods, flopping around. There's like music, there's lights and stuff. It'd be like Burning Man and the redwoods and the
No, I was going to call it Taft, the cremation of all my cares, or
exactly,
Taft, or the story of creation of all my cares.
Cremation
of all my cares, yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, cremation of care ritual, you know.
That's exactly, and that's the whole thing is that he has to, and the whole thing is it shows you how important the ritual is to him because he has to let loose, and you have to cremate your care. I think it'd just be really funny.
He cares so much.
We care a lot.
Yeah, that gets back into the idea that people were taking trains around. Chris Kim, which one's Chris?
What's up, Chris? Guys? Can you all hear me all right?
I can, yeah. What's up?
All right,
hello.
Perfect.
How are you? We're talking about Pinkertons and the Bohemians and Bohemian Grove.
The cremation of care.
All that. What's up with you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, excellent. Yep, I'm somewhat familiar. Sorry for the late entry. I will just let y'all carry on and
no worries.
If try to pick up where you.
Do you have any?
Come up with ideas with burning human effigies? You know?
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on Bohemian Grove, Civil War, anything like that?
The Wicker Man, Burning Man.
Just start spieling. Don't feel bad.
Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Despite all my rage, I'm still just Nicolas Cage.
I'm interested in this whole thing that there's kind of this war going on between the Black Irish, the North Irish, the Order of the Pug with the Valentines, which are the North Scots. So those are the Normandy princes across.
What are the colors of the Order of the Pug?
I don't know. Is it orange or something?
No, I mean there's got to be colors. Colors are such an important thing, even though the pictures are black and white.
I mean, I wish Thomas knows some stuff about the Order of the Pug. Apparently, they have like really weird rules and rituals. You have to kiss the butt of the statue.
Is there a coat of arms or something?
Yeah,
or like a heraldry or
right.
This thing here
that looks like a sigil. That almost looks like a goetic, you know,
some kind of magic square. I don't know.
Yeah.
See, yeah, I can't find it in color.
Wait, that's circling the square.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it sticks out a bit, which is kind of funny. Yeah. And there's the handshake.
It almost looks like circuitry.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely probably colors to it, but I don't know what they are. But the thing is, it could be secret too. But the Order of the Pug organization, like the fact that there's just so many of these little moments that are associated with persons of color, civil rights issues. That this happens multiple times over in history, that we're seeing the Moorish conflict in the 1600s in England and Ireland, and the Order of the Pug are involved with that.
And the Moors are dark-skinned people, right? That's the whole deal with the Moors.
I think we scared Chris. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's all right. So we got
might come back.
Well, we never know. So the Order of the Pug in 1600s, in 1602, 1605, into when the Queen dies and is replaced by James. Then in 1860s, again with the Pinkertons and the destruction of the American Indian Confederacy, the creation of replacing. I mean, you have Jim Crow laws, right? So as soon as the Civil War ends, things get horrible for Black people all across the United States. It's worse than it was before for a lot of people, they say. And up until the 60s, when the Pinkertons are then in the Order of the Pug are involved again with the president, an entire new revolution is taking place. So it just, what is up with that? What do the Moors and the Irish have to do with each other? And the other thing that connects it to me is like the Moroccan flag, George Washington. Freemasonry is considered the Moorish sciences. So there's something going on.
Well,
right?
it does have to do with whiteness, and it has to do with what you can pass as, and it has to do with all these different things as far as like the mixing and the pent upness as far as like family lines and blood. And so can we go into maybe the thing with like the Seminoles and like people claiming Seminole heritage as a tax shelter?
Well, I mean, so I'm interested in that. My thought is that the Seminoles are, because they're groups of people that were already settling there before the United States existed, that it calls into question the United States as a colonization system. They're like, okay, well, we have these 13 colonies. Yeah, but what about these other colonies? I mean, because there's so many colonies here that are actually settled for centuries.
Claiming that Seminole heritage became a separatist movement thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but also because they weren't accepted, free and accepted brothers of the 5 tribes.
Well, they
It's
did.
interesting. It's interesting language.
I kept thinking about they say that the Cherokees actually the genetically testing done on them, saying they actually had some Middle Eastern bloodline. They're closer to the Middle Easterners than the rest of the Indian tribes.
So
He
you're
made it
gonna
back.
fuck
We
with
were like,
this,
oh, poor
Chris.
Chris. We're like, we scared him. That's it.
Yeah, the pugs, man. The pugs. No, as
fear. Have no fear.
You've got
Yeah,
asthma.
Yeah. I've got this horrible bronchitis just
Wheezing.
won't go away. And this septum deal, I don't know, man. It's really
It's going
nuisance.
around. My wife and I just had it actually.
Yeah, me
Septum
too.
damn near killed him.
It's not Corona, but I'll give you something else.
I just try to remind myself, at least I'm not Michael Jackson, and I'm glad I still have a septum. Stories of the Seminoles. I don't know. This is important. This has come up a lot. A lot of people have yelled at me. They've put exclamation points in their comments at me, which is passive aggressive, kind of. Maybe it's trying to be aggressive, but it's still, the point is they want me to talk about the fact that there were, and this is a hard language just because it's confusing. There's Black people in the United States, or Black people in the Americas before they were brought here. They brought themselves here, or they were already here. And this is something that's kind of hard for people to handle. The idea that America wasn't just settled in the 1619 project isn't correct, right? Because they point out John Kaser, like we showed earlier, the first slavery in 1600 and the beginning, and they're like, oh, it's free to go. Let's start buying and bringing people over here. Before that, you clearly have trade networks. You've got people that are all across Florida. We can see examples of the Algonquin and the Seminoles and other tribes as well.
Well, I think people just underestimated the way people travel. You look at the Phoenicians. Another civilization that predates all the seafaring tribes. I'm pretty sure they reached the Americas. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl or Viracocha. These bearded people, who are they that they arrived the indigenous Indians?
Can I read something here as far as
the
Seminole
please.
tribe? It says, so people, so Seminole history begins with bands of Creek Indians from Georgia and Alabama who migrated to Florida in the 1700s. Conflicts with Europeans and other tribes caused them to seek new lands to live in peace. Groups of lower Creeks moved to Florida to get away from the dominance of upper Creeks. So you got the upper and lower Creeks. And so, and also this is interesting. There's a website called myflorida.com. That's great. But we've got 5 Florida facts about the Seminole tribes of Florida. Number 1 fact being the Seminole tribe migrated to Florida. The number 2 fact that the Seminoles were originally Creek Indians. Okay. The tribe was friendly to runaway slaves. That's number 3. Number 4, the Seminoles fought 3 wars with the United States. And then the Seminole tribe of Florida is now thriving. But now they're good. Is basically the lesson here.
Oh wait, I think Chris is trying to say something, but you're muted.
Mute. Yeah, sorry, Chris. Go ahead and say again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just wondering, do they have to go to seminary first to become Seminole?
They might.
No.
I think it's probable.
I don't know. Just something that crossed my mind. But what is interesting is I just found out today, as a matter of fact, that my sister-in-law, her grandfather is half Creek Indian. The Creek Indians from Georgia, there's a specific tribe, but I could probably pick his brain. I could probably pick his brain for some information.
Upper or lower?
Will Morgan
you guys,
joining us.
Question.
Random.
I have
What's
a
up,
question
Will?
for you guys.
Hello?
Hey,
You
buddy.
guys hear me?
Yeah. Your mic sounds great.
Whoa, Will, look at that mic. That's a nice looking mic.
What is that? Is that what kind of mic is that?
It might
That's
look a
the,
little like Zach's if you pay attention.
Not that I'm working for Universal Audio, but it does have.
Yeah, is it a Universal Audio?
It's a Universal Audio SD1. We got the same mic,
wow.
Will. Look at that.
That's pretty sweet. I like my Shure and all that, but I kind of was looking at the Electro Voice, but we'll have to talk later.
The RE20 is good. This is basically like Santa Cruz made a cheaper version of a mic that sounds just as good as Shure's classic SM7B. But wow, look at that.
Oh my God.
Look at Will's. It looks great, Will.
Thank you.
Hey, how does my mic sound?
I'm having a little bit of issue with echo, but
I gotta wait. You said there's something as good as the RE20? Because
Well,
I'm
no,
looking more and more at the RE20.
If you're interested in an RE20, the company Heil, they're actually from St. Louis, called Heil Microphones, Heil. They have a large diaphragm. Yeah,
It's a
right.
horrible name for a microphone. What?
Well, you know.
All right.
I think I know what's going
But
on.
they have a version of an RE20 that's really good
Dude.
too.
What a dog whistle that only really expensive microphones can pick up on. But okay. So
Well, yeah, not only fuck.
it's all right. So okay,
I
but the
just have to get
Seminoles-
something straight too. Kanye mentioned that Hitler designed the microphone that this blue bottle microphone. Like if you look up Hitler mic, it's this mic that Blue now owns the patent for, which is Baltic Latvia Universal Electronics.
I have that mic. I love that mic.
I have a number of Blue mics, but if you look up, the Hitler mic, Hitler did not actually design the mic. Kanye was Hitler designed the mic.
Oh my
we
God.
all use. See, that's the baby bottle. That's the bottle.
Friggin' put it together. I have that mic. I love this mic.
So
Hey, guys,
there you go, man.
Oh
Now you're live with that mic guilt for the rest of your life.
Is that the microphone that he used at the Munich Olympic Games?
Yes,
that's pretty base.
That mic. What made that mic so interesting is that it used tubes and it had interchangeable capsules, and so I have one that's like the baby version of that I can. They're like bayonet style capsules. But Hitler didn't. I just wanted to clarify. Anyone watching out there that still listens to Kanye or any of that, like if you had any, Hitler didn't design any microphones. I just wanted to make sure. Everyone knew that.
Well, I'm very fascinated by this now because if that's the microphone that was used on the Munich Games, then that's the very first transmission to outer space, right? That's the first, the first international. Or what do you call it? The signal that
I have that gold. I have that record. I have the whole gold LP vinyl set.
Oh, that's Voyager. You're talking about Voyager.
Totally.
He's talking about the first Olympics or like were the first transmission to go up in space, like in the movie Contact. The information from the aliens, it's Hitler. And everybody's like, oh, shit.
That's what I'm trying to talk about. Yeah, exactly.
Reverse
definitely
SETI.
not the first thing you want to hear in space. Yeah.
This is our first
baseball.
ambassador,
That's
Hitler.
why we tried to afterwards we crowd the signal with baseball signals. We're like, it's a home run. Try to make sure everybody's chill. We don't want them to think that. Do you think aliens prefer baseball though now? Like, do you think that, or is it kind of like noise pollution? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
I feel like my microphone totally jumped the whole conversation.
What do you mean?
No.
You guys were on pugs and shit, and then
we were talking about pugs. We're talking about all kinds of stuff. I just
all over the place.
I just couldn't help but be happy that it sounds so good and looks good in there.
Will, do you have any thoughts about the Civil War or the elite or the Illuminati?
Okay,
or
so
Catholics?
my experience on the Civil War is a lot different because I grew up in Alabama, and
thank God we were waiting for someone.
This is the cool thing. Like everything you said, I've discovered to be true, but that's not how I understood it when I was growing up. When you grow up in Alabama, you feel a little bit guilty, I guess.
Bro, one time I went to Louisiana and unknowingly walked in a Sons of Confederate Veterans parade. It was so freaking rad. And I think that's what you got to do. You got to be like, hey, dude, we survived. And they teach you to hate yourself. It's horrible.
But you kind of do. You kind of just feel like, I grew up on Sanford and Son. So it was a joke. Alabama has always been a joke. But it was when I married a Mexican woman who was a school teacher who was like, the Civil War wasn't all about racism and slavery. It was about states' rights and stuff. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was a little bit upset with her
photos
at
of
first,
Puerto
but-
Rican sweatshops in the 1980s just to remind you of what the Yankees do. Right. Sorry, keep going.
Oh yeah, there's I can't remember the exact order number, but there was an order to actually round up all the Jews in the Civil War because they were still buying cotton and under the black market. Because that was a huge, I mean, like you said the third most richest country on the planet. I remember reading it was the fourth, but
Depends how you look at it. If you only,
because of cotton was huge. They were supplying most of the nation with its money at that time.
Do you mean like literally like the African American market?
Well, if you look at the Levi
black market, like
market,
what is the?
I wanted to point this out. So this is kind of important. People do say officially that the Confederacy.
Will, you're muted.
Oh yeah, Will, jump in there if you're trying to say. Sorry. Oh, I can't.
Will, you're muted.
Stuff. You have to push the mute button if you want it. Or is he frozen? I think he's frozen. That's okay. We'll go back.
Can you unmute him?
Yeah, your camera's frozen.
Is my echo still screwed up or no?
It's a little weird, but it's I'm
try
to talk one.
Okay. I'll see if I corrupt that camera.
Yeah.
Will's trying to talk.
Here, yeah, try that try to talk without the video on. See if that helps.
Yeah, how about now?
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's okay.
Audio wise?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to test. I don't have anything to add at this point.
All right, cool. All right, I just want to say, with the Confederacy, they would have been the third largest if you really consider their industry. We usually only consider cotton. The thing about the Confederacy is they also had places. All right, look, the Confederacy invented submarines, airships, machine guns. The amount of industry that was coming out of the South. Eli Whitney, right, invented the cotton gin. And he also invented the hemp gin. And because of that, the entire industry was shifting across the world. And the South was no longer going to need manual labor. They were going to need specialization for mass manufacturing. And that was going to change the world. And how clearly was the South involved in this? Well, again, Confederate submarine. Look at pictures of them. They were using them in the Civil War. The Civil War the Confederacy had freaking submarines. So just for understanding, it's not what you were told. It definitely was far more powerful.
Well, it wasn't. And Germany wasn't Germany the first one who came up with the submarine in Europe?
What do you got there?
I think it was Leonardo da Vinci, right?
Oh, well,
Leonardo da Vinci first come up with the idea of the submarine.
I mean, theoretically, if you look on Wikipedia, they're going to be like, there's people that talked about the submarine before that, right? I think they go back further, but also the airships, because in the Civil War there were full-on airship battles that went on, and they had cloud seeding machines that were using these weird gases that they were pouring into the sky in order to block out the clouds so that people couldn't get up into an airship and see above.
But they were experimental, though, right? They weren't like in mass production. They were like
the airships weren't in mass production, but the airships in the Civil War, they did have dozens of them in a time.
They were like dirigibles, right?
So they had basically, they didn't quite have Zeppelins, because Zeppelin technically is a framed airship, but they did have basically something that would have looked like this. You would have had these giant gases that were being brought in, and they were filling up these balloons. And then somebody would have said they were signed up for a special assignment, probably like a teenager, and they would have put them up in an airship with an ear helmet thing, not much. And then they would just be sending messages down. And so this is how they started to learn about, they would actually have electrical systems that would be for Morse code to send notes or whatever back up and down a wire line. And they would actually also have maybe snipers and different kinds of things going on. But weapons were far more advanced than we're told. People act like this was just this crazy time.
Well, now the cartels got a hold of all these technologies to transport coke to Europe and submarines, and we got else. What else? I just read an article about the cocaine problem in Europe right now. Just like everybody's got submarine.
Well versed in biowarfare.
Yeah,
with smallpox blankets and stuff.
Here's an example of that. Ulysses S. Grant began expelling Southern Jews until Lincoln stepped in, right? So
there it is.
right? 1862 letter was short, but it's interesting because it shows how
Well, the
it
word
works.
speculator and Jew were pretty much synonymous back then. So there's a lot of speculation that he was just talking about the individuals who were trying to sell cotton on the black market and not necessarily Jews.
Wow.
But that's not what the thing says.
Dang.
And you know what? The Levi Strauss, that's a Jewish family, right? Levi's.
Yeah, absolutely.
Strauss,
Yeah.
it's German. I don't know if it's Jewish.
Oh, Levi Strauss he was a Jewish
German
denim.
Jew.
So he invented denim, they say, but the thing is, it's actually an Egyptian cotton textile. And the colors, even like the indigo style, it goes back to like the Egyptian priests. Denim and cotton. It's like Egyptian. Rabbi.
Japanese also have like natural blue color too. The indigo also. It's from a plant.
But they would wear denim and this kind of Egyptian cotton, and you'd wear white undergarments with this indigo. So basically, the turning of all American kids into priests by having them wear, these holy textiles. It's kind of interesting.
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I looked up in Hebrew gematria, dirigible, which is the word for like an inflatable, thing that you're seeing there. These dirigibles, and so 141 other words that are 141 are strong, strength, brave, assembler, judgment. Let's see, maculite. And this here we go. So to pierce, strike, to slight or reject, to despise or condemn, to cause to despise, to excite to contempt, to bloom to blossom, to fly forth. So just kind of interesting there as far as like the resonance of
What's the number? 154?
141.
141
is the if you look up dirigibles or dirigible singular.
Guys, this has been pretty rad. I'm sorry, I know Will and Chris, you guys showed up a little late, but you guys are welcome back next time. I'm gonna have to start packing my bags to go towards a plane pretty soon. I'm gonna go back to California for a little while. So.
Oh, that's right.
Where are you now?
I'm in Minnesota.
Why?
Because it's awesome. It's like the coolest place. I'm like feet from a lake, and there's like it's beautiful snow, and it's like you can't beat it really. I just think it's the best. But I gotta go back and deal with my dad and family and stuff like that.
In the home of our fine microphones.
Yeah, the storm and stuff. Cheers. Yeah, maybe look at the microphones. Yeah. Maybe. But can you guys put your private links into the private chat so I can share where they can find more of your material?
I'm not sure where the private chat is. Anyone can find me on Meta Egg on YouTube.
Meta Egg?
Meta Egg, like a metaphysical Easter egg. Zach came up with the name.
I did come up with the name, and I helped with the music.
I'll do you solid. Subscribe you in, man. Right, cool.
I am nothing without Zach.
I don't know about that.
I don't know. I definitely feel like my every noise sounds fuller and more supple when Zach's involved with its production. So
if you ever have a problem with production or need help with production, I'm not wanting to speak for Zach, but I'm sure Zach will come to your aid if you ask him nicely.
Dude,
for a small chunk of change, I'm sure.
Yeah.
No. American Kurt in Orpheus group, right? We need to get you guys talking to each other about music and sound design, like for real.
Absolutely.
And
Zach and I also have an album coming out soon.
Nice. Yeah. I sent some sound samples to Zach, and he ran him through his like compressors and machines and stuff like that, and tube amplifiers, and then the sound comes out of it, and you're like, whoa! And I just felt like that scene in Josie and the Pussycats, where I was like, man, this makes me want to buy stuff. It was like a good feeling.
We got to talk about. That's a weird movie, man.
Yeah. Well, next week, feel free. We can talk about Josie and the Pussycats next week. I'm all about it.
I don't know. We can talk about other stuff. I got to.
I always want to talk about
David.
That.
David butchered Robert Anton Wilson last week, and I sent him a text, and I was like so disappointed. And so he called me back today and asked me to come on, but he's going to be on next week, and if it's okay, I'd like to stop by then.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally
I'd like to be there as well if that's the case.
Yeah,
if it's going
jump on.
I'll be in your corner, Will.
Well, I'll see you on Friday, Zach.
And Chris, do you have a link for us to share?
No, not at this point. I don't have much of a digital presence. Everything is up right here near my library. So, but if I decide to start releasing content or something, I'll definitely update you guys.
Legit. Guys, go to Digital Chutney 420, which for some reason I've only covered the other side of. But Zacktron42 is also to get in touch with Zach. But check out his Puppet AI because it's so freaking good. So make sure you're following that. And did I already say it? But did you know American Time Machine, new album? It's really freaking amazing. Kurt, you make some amazing music. We got to get you and Zach together and see some more collaborations. I want to help make some music. This is cool. But in the meantime, everyone else, if you want to hear what it might sound like if Kurt made music, well, it already exists. It's right here. It's amazing stuff. And the architecture of all knowledge is a really beautiful and thoughtful album. You know, because like his last couple albums were like he's got a music. He's literally got an album called Musical Shitposting, which I can't even describe it better. But it's really good. It's amazing stuff. But he's self-depreciating because he's self-aware. He's like, oh well, you know, I'm just making music. Yet it's amazing sounding, but I'm just a person. It's weird. I think somehow he's become more comfortable with the fact that he makes amazing music, and so the titles are more to the effect of that. It's God, guys, can't stress it enough. Go listen to American Time Machine. Makes me happy.
Awesome.
Also, did I don't think I showed this properly. Eddie.
Well, I don't know if you have time, but
we should go through here a little bit.
just go back to the Martin Luther King statue.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the slug demon thing going on there.
Actually, I have another post before this one, but it's hilarious. It's different angles. Then no matter which angle you look at it, it's just like an orgy, you know. Just like
what is it called again? The Martin Luther King statue. And then you like look up Epstein or Podesta statues, right? Like, look at that. That's pretty good.
I thought it was built by the same guy who provided the Podesta.
But like, this is not even the bad angle, right? Like, you look from certain angles, and it looks like someone pulling themselves apart. Like, it reminded me of The Society, 1989. Have you seen that movie, The Society, 1989, where they pull each other apart? It's like all horrible. That's what it reminded me of, and also the Podesta statue, which is like the Dahmer. You know, the Dahmer statue where he's folded into himself, which is just, because that's what you want. You want a statue of a murder victim's, embalmed in gold or whatever, cast in gold.
Statues without head just doesn't make sense. You got to put the head. It's gotta be a head.
But the slug phallus is pretty good too. And we brought this up on Based AF, but I'll say it again. David Goliath phallus, right? Because we all know this, I hope, and some people like to pretend otherwise. But there's this statue of David, and he's got in his hand this, right here.
Uncut.
That's what he's holding.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, and people keep people keep saying that that's not Goliath's penis, right? George was like, no, that's not. That's a sling, right? Because it's a slingshot. That's the other story. However, I don't see a tomato here. I just see like that he took Goliath's cock and made into a slingshot. Okay.
I'm disappointed.
He was commissioned by the Vatican, by the way.
I'm really disappointed. That's what Goliath was carrying?
I'm just saying. Well, because he wasn't 100 feet tall. It's not like he was a whale.
Okay. There's some other cool articles. If you want to just scroll real quick, this one. That
was like a pug's
really
dick.
weird news in the last week.
That's pretty horrifying. Okay, let's go back.
Just kind of roll down real quick and see if there's anything interesting.
Greta, like this, dictator.
She's gonna be at Davos tomorrow. But no, let's keep going. I post some joke stuff. Let's skip. Just Davos.
Get to the jokes.
I know. I'm trying to see what else is funny here.
Well, Synchronous, he posts like so many amazing things, right? So we, this is partially why we were talking earlier about this. Like, if you go through here, I say you have to be following Synchronous because every day you're like, oh wow, here's an encyclopedia of synchronicity I wasn't expecting. So, Epstein, right?
Oh yeah, I don't know. That's a very depressing subject because there's this woman who's a whistleblower. But
in our year of Skidoo.
Oh yeah. That 20. Did we talk about it last time? No, because I might have talked about it last week because
we owe ourselves to obsess over a number again. It's been a long time since numerology just like made us obsess over a number. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'd like to do 23.
Here, this one I haven't established a sync yet. Then this one with a Todd Field. He had the Oscar contender that came out of the Tar. I haven't seen it yet. Oh no, scroll down, man.
Todd Field.
Yeah, Todd Field. Yeah, he's gonna his new film's coming out.
Way out in left field.
For the 10 of you that dropped off before you got to see this part of the rant, God
that
help
was
you.
a joke. That was good.
But here's the thing that I want to talk about is that Todd Field, you know, his name in Eyes Wide Shut was Nightingale, right? So so Nightingale was on the cover of the it was spelled at the bottom of the 2020 Economist. So if you look at the very bottom line, it says Nightingale. But of course, 3 years later, his movie came out. And then now he's spilling the beans on with Tom Cruise, seeing Tom Cruise rescue his film from Weinstein. Weinstein was about to trash his film.
Mission Impossible, right?
Yeah, it has something to do with that too.
Yeah,
because I don't
Saving
know.
the day with Thetans.
Yeah, but I think things are coming together. I got to see the movie because also I thought about Star Wars. I thought Tartaria.
Yeah, we got to watch Star Wars. Okay. Everyone says it's important to see this movie, and they don't even know
the heroine's journey, Black Tar Wars.
Yeah,
it'll come together.
All right,
I
guys.
got through about half of it and fell asleep.
You got what?
Black Tar Wars. You started nodding off.
Oh, okay.
No, I fell asleep. I couldn't get through it, man. I tried like twice. I tried to watch it twice and fell asleep both times.
You can never catch the dragon. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much for being here. Peace.